get the
Council
WPS.
Callum. Council Sanford.
Here.
Council Boncory. Council Barone.
Present.
Council Thierry.
Yeah.
Council Boyajin.
Present.
Council Davento. Vice President Mayo.
Here.
President Gill.
Yes, here. A quorum is present. We'll move on with the minutes as circulated. If there's no objection, I'll vote them as a group. February 17th, executive minutes. March 13th, executive session minutes, which will be voted but not released. March 3rd, minutes of the regular meeting. And March 10th, special meeting of the council. Could I have a motion? Motion. Pardon me? Oh, that's right, we have to do them separately. You're right. All right, so we'll start with February 17th, when everybody was present. Do I have a motion to? Motion. Motion by Council Lettieri, seconded by Council Boyajin. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Executive session, March 3rd. All present except Councilor Callum. Motion?
Motion.
Councilor Lettieri, second by Councilor Boyajin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Regular meeting of March 3rd, all present except Councilor Callum. Motion?
Motion.
Councilor Lettieri, seconded by
Second.
Councilor Boyajin. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Regular meeting of March 3rd, all present except Councilor Callum. All those in, motion, please?
Motion.
Motion by Councilor Barone, seconded by Councilor Boyajin. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Presentation. Ms. Meredith Hurley would like to give us a presentation on Wellness Awareness Week.
Yes.
Meredith.
Thank you.
Yep.
So back in January, I started working with the high school with Jane Rupp, the adjustment counselor there, on a wellness week, a wellness committee, and out of that kind of grew bigger and bigger and bigger. And so what we're working on right now is we're going to do a town-wide wellness week starting April 12th and going through the 17th. The high school in particular is highlighting on the 5 days, 5 different topics. Monday is going to be alcohol and substance abuse, Tuesday, bullying awareness, Wednesday, mental health, Thursday, pride, and Friday, physical health and the health of the community. In addition to that, what the health department is doing is on that Sunday, we are going to do a health and wellness expo at the high school gym to highlight some of the businesses here in town that have been doing lots of great things. East Boston Neighborhood Health Center will be there, Hallmark Health, Dr. Pransky's office, Hallmark Health VNA, Oceanside Pilates, Commonwealth Clinical Services, the Winthrop Farmers Market, the MRC, CrossFit, Winthrop, RPM. We're going to have a demo area so that people can go in and kind of try out the new, like CrossFit. Winthrop is pretty new, so they're going to have their dumbbells there and kind of go through their routine. People can try them out. It's like a free event. It should be pretty fun. The coming school PTO, if everything gets cleared and the sidewalks get cleared, they're having a 5K run that morning as a fundraiser for the PTO, as long as we can get the sign off on the safety. So it should be like a pretty fun kickoff to this week. On Monday, Dana Farber is going to come and do their mobile mammography van at the senior center. They can screen up to 30 women. And they would be registered through the health department so that we can make sure that, you know, they're not super high risk, that they kind of fit the criteria. So we're working pretty hard on that right now. And on Wednesday night, the 15th, we're going to do a community awareness forum with North Suffolk Mental Health and do some addiction medicine education with Miriam Irving, I believe her name is, and then do a Q&A, a parents panel, and also do mental health awareness, do almost like breakout sessions. It's going to be from 6:30 to 8:30 at the high school. One thing that struck us with the youth risk behavior survey is that Winthrop students are recording almost twice the state level for suicide ideation and suicide attempts. I think the state is 6%, Winthrop's at 16% for the high school. So this is like something that is creeping up immensely and ties in hand in hand with substance abuse and trying to fight it. You can't have one without the other, really. So, I mean, you can, substance use is generally tied to some mental health issues, and so it works well together to try and deal with them at the same time. So really, it's just going to be to educate. We have some great resources through the MOPC opiate drug grant that we sit with Revere, Chelsea, and Saugus. We just hired 2 peer recovery coaches to work solely here in Winthrop to kind of bridge the gap between first responders and treatment. You know, it's really hard to find beds, it's really hard to navigate the system. So these are folks that have walked the walk and have come through on the other side and have gone through some training and are now ready and willing to work in our community with these folks. So that's a huge thing. It's something we've been trying to do for a long time. So they're here and they're ready, so they're going to be introduced at this forum and how to get in contact with them. And you know, we were also talking with the probation department over at East Boston Court. Their drug court is doing great things over there, and they want to come and speak about, you know, the resources that they can provide. So I think that it's going to be a great way to get the community out and just get it talking a little bit more. And you know, Winthrop's so interconnected that even though it's not, may not be particularly in one person's house, it may be a coach. Like it may, you know, a coach could come across it with a kid. You know, it's 2 degrees of separation just because of the nature of this town. So I think that everybody has to open their eyes a little bit about how they can be useful, even if it's not directly impacting their family. Betsy Shane at the Chamber has been working with me extensively. She's been doing great things, and the area restaurants are going to highlight healthy choices and do healthy specials throughout the course of the week. So it's just going to be a real big focus on health and wellness. So
Great.
but the information's in there for you guys.
Council?
Yeah, and when is this all starting? I didn't catch the date.
April 12th. So it's the week
Can you
leading up
send
to.
the council like an agenda of what all of these different
Yeah.
things are happening?
I think I put one there, but
It's
I'll
right
send it
on
to you
here.
electronically too.
It's right on the hand.
Wonderful. All right,
You-
okay.
Yeah, oh, here, you can have this one.
Thanks, Ann. Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Yes.
With the coaches, when they present themselves, could you just give an outline back then about like what the flow or the process, the system is that, you know, they connect, and then how is the follow-up, and, you know, at that thing?
Yes, exactly. So they just completed like a week-long training last week. So now we're meeting with, we're having to meet with the police department and some of their detectives, just to kind of get the trust built and making sure that everybody has the resources, you know, the contact information. So yeah.
Yeah, okay. No,
And
that.
how to, yeah, who can they ask to access these people?
Yeah, and then what the follow-up is afterwards. That'd be great if you could do that. Thank you.
Any other questions from the
Terrific.
council? Meredith, could you post at least the front page on the town website? Or maybe you already have.
Yeah, well, not yet, but yes,
Okay.
I will.
Yeah, so that'll be,
definitely.
thank you very much for your presentation, very enlightening, and we will see you on the 12th. Maybe not the 13th, 14th, 15th. 16th.
It's a lot.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the public for Meredith? Further questions from the council? If not, I'm going to ask Mike Vanalaro to introduce the participants and get the program.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President, Council. So we're doing a presentation on the Centerfield Taxiway, and we have Jose Masso as the Director of Community Relations at Massport. We have Flavio Leo and Brenda Enos. And Flavio's going to come up and do a overview of the project.
Welcome, Flavio.
Yeah, thank you, sir, thank you, Michael. I'm just gonna use this as a, we also have a presentation that we passed out. Brenda's gonna go into more details about the study. I just wanted to set the context related to the Centerfield Taxiway, because it's been operational for quite some time, since 2010. And Brenda's gonna do more of the detailed work on the air quality, but we wanted to set you some context regarding the airport. So this is Logan Airport. As you can see, we're obviously an urban airport. We're neighbors. Winthrop is right here, right next door. We have a runway layout, which is complex, and it reflects pretty much the wind and weather pattern we have. Aircraft they're gonna take off into the wind. And so we have runways that face every single direction of the compass because we're in New England and Mother Nature gives us all kinds of winds. If this was Phoenix, it would be a much simpler layout pointing west to east in 80-degree weather all the time. So with this layout, the FAA chooses the runways and the taxiways to accommodate the flights in and out of Logan. They base that on multiple decisions, particularly weather. The key facility that we're going to talk about is the Centerfield Taxiway. It is located between the two major parallels of 4 left and 4 right. And basically, the reason the taxiway was built was for safety. Before the taxiway, the aircraft will be landing and taking off, and they will get stuck in certain parts of the airport, and the controllers would have to work to accommodate the aircraft taxiing while they will do active runways going on. So with the Centerfield Taxiway, we've decongested some key points on the airport surface. And for example, one of the things that we used to get complaints a lot historically from Winthrop was also a problem for the controllers, was when we land 4 right, aircraft would turn on taxiway Yankee and Baby 15 and stop here with their engines pointing towards Winthrop, while, because this is an active runway, the controllers, you can imagine, have to coordinate that crossing. With the Centerfield Taxiway, since it's been built, that congestion point is gone. Basically, the aircraft, as we expected, the aircraft are landing and then they're turning away from the congested area. That helps the pilots and the controller, but it also happens the community. Another situation that's also helped in terms of deconflicting is aircraft that are stuck on this end of the airport. For example, you may have an aircraft that's taxied down to the north end of the airport, but the pilot may get a call from the controller saying, hold on, your airport you're going to, let's say Philadelphia, is fogged in with fog, you have to stop. In the old days, the aircraft was stuck down there, and we will get calls from the community saying, what's that aircraft doing down there? It's been sitting there for 45 minutes. And with the taxiway, we noticed the controllers will take the aircraft down and stage it down here. Now that helps them because it deconflicts the area, but also helps the community. So on an operational level, we've seen this being a benefit. The other thing I'd like to point out is from a global perspective, when we were thinking about building and discussing building this facility, Logan had about 488,000 flights and about 27 million passengers. Today, we have about 360,000 flights and about 31 million passengers. So in the meantime that we've been doing this facility, passengers have gone up, but flights have gone down. Now that's a pain for people who are flying because the seat next to you is always full, but from a community perspective, it's a huge benefit because you have less flights with more people. And we've seen in that time period, emissions going down in terms of noise as well as air quality. So that kind of sets the context on the operations end. I'm going to turn it over now to Brenda on the study. Thank you.
Thank you. So I think everybody has a copy of the presentation. So I don't have a board, so I'm just going to go through it. I'm going to actually start on page 9. So as a just as a reminder about what air pollutants we actually monitored for. So on page 9, there's an outline of 4 different categories. Volatile organic compounds, carbonyls, things called PAHs, and then in particular particulate matter. And all these air pollutants were agreed upon by DEP and DPH. So on page 10, I put together some information on the background, because the study's been going on for quite a long time. So this was done as a result of a MEPA certificate from the Centerfield Taxiway. And the goals of the study was to actually do some monitoring pre-construction and then monitoring post-construction, and then do a comparison to see if there were any changes in the air quality. So from a timeline perspective, we did our pre-monitoring in 2007, 2008. We then issued a report for year 1, posted that on our website. We built the Centerfield Taxiway in 2009, 2010. And then we did the post-construction sampling in 2010 and 2011. We did a separate report for year 2, posted that on our website. And then since 2011, we've been doing a lot of data analysis and a report. There were 160,000 data points that were collected as a result of this study. So each one of those data points had to be statistically evaluated to make sure it was good data before we actually did the analysis. So we had a lot of conversations and meetings with DEP and DPH, and then finally here we are today with the study. The next page just includes kind of a map of where the monitoring stations were located. So the blue dots are called the primary, and so for all those parameters that were on page 9, we did monitoring for all of them. You then see the satellite stations in the yellow triangles, and those were actually just monitored for black carbon and PM 2.5. And then the purple square is one of the background stations that we used. DEP has them throughout the state. I didn't include all of them, I just included one so that you could see what it looked like. On the next page, as we were going through this study, we wanted to, even though it wasn't part of the MEPA certificate, we were trying to evaluate what the data meant. And so we looked at EPA benchmark concentrations, in particular the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, and we took our data and then tried to compare it to see where we stood to those standards. So the results indicated that 95% of the chemical pollutants concentrations were actually below those benchmark values, and 89% of the particulate concentrations were below those same values. If you look on page 13, this is kind of the summary page for the comparison of year 1 and year 2. So the conclusions indicate that the most pollutant concentrations actually showed no change or decrease from year 1 to 2. There are a few exceptions for about 4 VOCs, 1 carbonyl at Bremen Street and Court Road, and then 1 PAH at Enavoy Street. And some of those exceptions could potentially be due to some of the major highways. There's stationary sources throughout those locations, so it could be not attributed to Logan Airport. On page 14, I kind of just included a visual. This is a scatter plot. There's a lot of them throughout the report, and you can just see that to the far right, we had done the analysis for January of 2008 with the red dots. And then when you look to the left for January of 2011 with the blue triangles, you can actually see visually what the decrease looked like for black carbon at Court Road. On page 15, we had done a lot of additional analysis beyond our MEPA certificate. The DPH and the DEP had asked us to take a look at the effects of aircraft operations, motor vehicle traffic activity, wind direction, and wind speed on the air quality. In particular, we just looked at black carbon and PM 2.5. And so the conclusions are that the black carbon concentrations are influenced by airport emission sources. That's not a surprise. Any airport study that's been done throughout the country has concluded the same. But in particular, the PM 2.5 concentrations are actually dominated by regional emission sources. And so the last page just states that, that the conclusion that the consultants had come up with is that the air quality in and around Logan has not deteriorated since construction and operation of the Centerfield Taxiway.
Thank you. Questions from the council?
Yeah, I would like
Council Phil.
to know, in your exception on page 13, what were the 4 VOCs that increased in the PAH?
I don't know them off the top of my head. I can look that up though, if you need to know.
Yeah, I would like to know which of the
Okay.
6 were the 4 that increased.
Can I get back to you with that, or do you need?
Please.
Okay, I will do that.
Council President?
Yes, Council.
Question, please. So the yellow satellite triangles were not tested for VOCs?
Correct.
Why?
Because when this study was originally set up, the DEP and the DPH decided that the primary sources were the most critical ones and would evaluate more of what was going on.
Pretty critical if you live in Cottage Park. So those VOCs, would they be carcinogens?
Some are, some aren't.
Any further questions from the council? Council Sid?
Maybe more of a statement, I'm sorry. Go on, Council Chair. On page 15, results, concentrations are dominated by regional emission sources. That's not to take any less of a responsibility that Logan adds to those emissions.
Correct,
regionally,
correct. We're
In-
about
in a
two,
sub-
we're about
in-
2%,
in a substantial way.
Logan is about 2% of the air emissions in the entire region.
So is it, go ahead, Council Kelly.
Where you have the satellite, the little yellow triangles, one of them was down in Point Shirley in Coughlin Park, and that was a really big, huge point we made at the time to find out what was going on down there, because that is an area where a lot of the children congregate. We have a brand-new playground down there, and we have a lot of families down there, and it was separated from all the other parts of the town. And we really did want to know what was happening. How do we get some information on that?
On where the dot is located, or
The
you're saying
yellow
it's not?
triangle, which is down there.
Yeah, that's actually in the report, so everything.
That is in the report,
yeah.
which is online.
Yes, and I actually have copies here too, if you'd like a
Okay,
copy.
great.
There's, the 160,000 data points aren't online because you're like Logan computer, but I have CDs in case somebody's interested in looking at those
Thank you.
160,000.
Councilman Corey.
Yeah, I think the point she's trying to make is that yellow dot at Coughlin Park, which is also the runway that they come across Euro Beach on when there's always kids on the beach. That's used a great amount of the time. There should have been some kind of testing there for VOCs as well as just the black carpet.
Right.
We should have found out what is being dropped as they're landing there. Because it's constant, you can see the stream many times when they're letting the gas go. And that should have been tested stronger, I believe. Another question. You're saying that the volume of planes that we're getting has lessened. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct.
Then why are we getting planes after midnight? Last night, I stood on my porch and filmed from midnight till 12:15 in the morning. And there had to be 15 planes coming every minute, a minute and a half. They came over the town, or looked like they came over the town. They were probably coming
They were on
Bayswater.
2 left, yeah, they were landing here, actually.
But you could see them
Yes.
slow right over the town,
Yes.
and they were very noisy, and it's after midnight.
Well,
Winthrop
well,
residents need some kind of sleep, I mean, some,
Yeah, thank you for that question. Logan is a 24/7 operation. We don't close it down, and we do get flights. The flights drop dramatically after about 8 or 9 o'clock, but we still get flights. However, if we get delays, if there's a weather delay, if there's a wind delay and so forth, those aircraft that were due to come in, let's say 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, won't come in until 10 or 11 or 12 o'clock. So that's what you're seeing. In terms of the total number of flights, they are significantly down. And to go back, for example, to your question relating to VOCs, the VOCs are down dramatically. So if you're asking the question related to the airport and its use and the runway usage, because we went from about 490,000 flights in 2000 to 364,000 flights today, and because of the new jet engine technology, Logan has 97% of its jet fleet has the quietest jet engines called Stage 4. It's the best stage engines out there. And because of those things, VOCs and NOx, all these major pollutants have actually gone down dramatically. That doesn't mean that we don't impact. I'm not saying that we don't impact, but there has been a big downward trend in the right direction, significant in the right direction.
at night, when the town is quiet, because there's no activity going on, and people are in home and people are in bed, is not the time that we should be having planes going over, especially if you're down 100,000 flights. They shouldn't be through the night, and it shouldn't be 24/7.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council.
With the 2% of the region being the airport contributing to the pollutants, how are you defining the region, I guess? What is the region just?
It's around 128, like greater 128.
Okay, so it isn't, do you have a percentage of the, I'll say the East Boston, Revere, and Winthrop area percentage that you contribute?
I think the key way to look at it is the way air emissions works is that it gets mixed, because we're on the coast and we get lots of winds, like tonight, the air gets all mixed together, and you really, I guess the scientists tell us to look at it from a regional basis. That's where you get a lot of these EPA regulations on a regional basis. So basically, that's why it's the appropriate way to, it's hard to cut up a box and say, well, what's the percentage over this area? I mean, we do these kind of studies, we do produce.
Yeah, you just did a study
these
in that area.
analyses.
Hold on.
And they do show that, you know, we're not saying there's no impact. Obviously, we're a major transportation center next to this town, but from everything that we're looking at, the trends are in the right directions. And this study, which was one of the fears this community had, was if we built this Medfield taxiway, would it change the operations of the airport? Would it increase noise and would it increase emissions? And so the commitment with MEPA was, well, let's study it to make sure, and the results are that it has not changed. If anything, it's gone down.
No, no, I do understand that. I guess I'm struggling with it. Are there any smart scientists that can calculate within a smaller region than just, that large square mile, whether there's, any formulas out there that can be calculated to look at in a smaller area, in a densely populated area, what percentage the airport contributes to our pollution, I guess is what I...
Well, I guess that's part of the testing is the monitoring, is that's what the monitoring does. And then you have all the data. I mean, the monitoring is basically the way to do that, is you put a monitor down somewhere and then you let the analysis run, and now you have all the data.
Oh, so there'll be a percentage in...
Well, I don't think you're gonna get that percentage, but the data, the way to cut the data would be to do the monitoring. So the question is, what's happening in my backyard, right? That's your question.
Right.
And so the way to do that is to do the monitoring, and that's why we did this study. And you have 160,000 data points, and all the summary data that's in the report.
So, sorry to but I guess then, do we have data then, like in Dedham, of what the concentration levels are there, so I could look at, in that region? Do we have data?
No, I mean, it would be on the DEP website. You would be able to see if they had taken any, any monitoring in that local area.
Okay.
Okay.
Council Burrow?
So I guess my question centers around those yellow triangles that were not primary data collection points. I really feel that they should have been primary collection points, because the data that you received, garbage in, garbage out, I don't think that it's a fair representation of the VOCs that we're constantly being crop dusted with. And to say 2% is, the airport's responsible for 2%. And by your own admission, the wind blows every which way. I really think that that's a specious argument to say that. I really think we're getting a lot more than 2% from Logan Airport.
Council Sim?
Yeah, and again, and I have to agree, it sounds like you took an average of all the data points and come out with your figures and your information giving us tonight. And I couldn't agree more. I think there's particular points in Winthrop, as well as the surrounding communities, that are much more affected because of these pollutants. And I think to regionalize it and to average it out is, not being quite as honest with the result of the test as we should be. That's number one. And number two is, you're a 24/7 airport, which I understand, an international airport. Is there a curfew for freight carriers such as FedEx, UPS? It's 24/7 across the board?
The federal regulations are that if you meet the stage 3 standard, which is the federal regulation, is you get to use the airport. And so they do fly.
A stage 3 is relative to noise and pollution?
Correct.
Okay. Is there any other flights that come in that don't meet that stage?
No.
3?
No.
There is not?
No, there's a federal standard that they're prohibited from.
So if a flight's coming in this direction, they don't meet the stage 3, they're not allowed to
But, they do produce noise, and as the counselor mentioned, it's quiet at night, so we do get complaints from those. But there are requirements for jet engines, just like there are requirements by the EPA for car engines.
Yeah, I had a discussion, if I could just do it, I had a discussion with someone who worked for FedEx and said that there was a restriction, that there are flights that come in from FedEx and or UPS that don't meet these standards, and there's a fine that's issued. Is that not a true statement?
There used to be, that person may have been confused, because in the old days, this is pre-1999, there used to be stage 2 aircraft which were allowed to fly, and Massport we have a ton of noise rules, which your folks from Winthrop Hazards Committee were a lot instrumental over the years to making sure we have, prohibited stage 2 aircraft from flying at night, and they would get fined. But after 1999, a federal law was passed which prohibited anything that was stage 2 or lower, and that regulation, although it's still in place, is redundant because anybody that's flying is stage 3.
Counsel?
There are no fines for stage 3 planes coming in after a certain time,
It's illegal. We can't do that. It's a federal requirement.
so you're not collecting any money from planes coming in during the night?
Not based on noise. We collect it from annual fees, but not based on noise.
Any further questions from the council? From the public? Just, could I get a clarification on what the benchmark means, the EPA benchmark?
Okay, so EPA has published national ambient air quality standards, okay, they're published on their website. And so what we did was we took the results of the monitoring that we did and compared them to those numbers.
Okay. So you're 95% below the benchmark?
Correct.
Okay. Any further questions from anybody? If not, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I do have one other quick one, just to cut to the bottom line. The center field taxiway has reduced the amount of idle time and has reduced the
Correct.
amount of time heading toward.
Correct. It's basically decongested this part of the airport.
Good
We don't
word,
have as much backup
decongested.
as we used to.
Counsel?
You know what's interesting is that all the lesser flights, it hasn't gone down substantially from, you said there was limited changes. Did I not read that in the thing?
Can you say it again? I'm sorry.
I thought I read on one of it that there
Which page,
was.
sir?
Those pollutant concentrations showed no changes or decreases.
Yeah, that's the result of the study.
So, but there were less flights. So there were less flights, you would have thought it would have dropped more, no?
I think that's the difference between kind of a global picture. Like when we talk about the VOCs are down, that's kind of an annualized snapshot. But when you look at these individual monitors, they're doing a peak number. So obviously we still have flights. We still got 364,000 flights. So in the middle of the day, we'll have activity, and that's what the monitor is picking up.
You know, just thinking of it, the only thing I've really heard that makes me feel good is the fact you admit that you're a major impact on the town. I don't know if the study makes me feel any better about it, but, you know, it is a major impact on our lives. So the fact that it's, you know, that you brought that out is, you know, half a step.
One more thing.
Councilman, yes.
You know, again, with the satellites, what was the purpose of putting those down in different sites if they weren't gonna gather the data from them? Was it just to please us? To make us think that they were really gathering information, but they really weren't taking that into consideration?
No, DEP and DPH were actually the people that decided where the sites were actually going to go and what we should actually monitor for. So they were the ones that actually, I wasn't around, so I wasn't involved in those meetings, but I just know they were the ones that actually decided where we should monitor for and where that should happen, so.
I wonder if any of them live in Winthrop.
Any further questions from the
Council
council?
President, may I say something? Two
Yeah.
things. Number one, I think we have for you the full report plus the CD, which also has those 160,000 data points, which will include a lot of those secondary, the primary, and the others. But I also want to leave you, I don't know if I want to hand these out, I'll leave it to you. That's a calendar of the year 2015, but it has some of the initiatives that are very much a result of the activism of some of your fellow citizens, including our friends from Winthrop Hazards Committee, that made us focus as to what are the things that we're doing around sustainability and things of that nature that have to do with the environment. And you'll see some of the examples of what's taking place in the airport as of today and what we plan on doing in the future. And I think it will be informative, at the same time educational. And anything that you see there that might be of use to you, please make use of it. And anything that you have questions, please call up. There's a phone number and contact person. But again, thank you, and thank you to the Winthrop Hazards Committee for their help in us getting this to you and making it possible for the citizens of Winthrop to hear the funding source. So we want to thank you for your time, and thank also to my colleague and teammate Mike Baldonado for making this possible this evening. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Meredith, before you go, could you post these meetings on the town calendar as well?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I wanted to recognize that we have Tony and Bob, both from the Airport Hazards Committee, and early.
I just want to say that this is the first time we saw this information too. And we are meeting, the committee is meeting this Thursday over at the senior center, our regular meeting. And this will be part of our discussion, so that we'll have a clearer idea of what actually presented.
Okay, Tony?
One other question, Mike. These are basically based on 24 hourly averages, all these data that were collected. So that, you remember Brian Dunson, he was using a particle counter, which is a different type of device. So some of this equipment is really archaic because you're taking, well, it's what the EPA recognizes, so it's not archaic yet. So it's taking a 24-hour average or hourly average for the black carbon, let's say. But in that time, there could have been a spike of so much black carbon that it would be like something would fall right down on you and you'd inhale it all, and then there wouldn't be any for the next minute. So it's like getting I was speaking about chemical warfare and modern chemical engineering magazines I have. And that this hits you and then it goes away. So I'm thinking the same thing will happen with the black carbon, with the PAHs, with the VOCs, because it's hitting you in one major concentration, and then possibly that could be causing some of the problems we're seeing later.
Okay, thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
And good night, gentlemen and lady. Thank you very much. In addition to Tony and Bob, earlier Dick Bangs and Dave Phipps were here representing the Airport Hazards Committee.
And one other thing is, Richard brought it up, we're looking for 2 more senior members, not elderly, but like the rest of the group. But, so more people will come in. And then secondly, we're looking for 2 high school students, preferably somebody in political science and someone in environmental both, And that would be nice to get a younger group of people coming in and sort of carrying on the torch. But these guys, I have not just let Johnny come lately. They've been doing this since 1971, so.
A suggestion on the high school kids, if you could refer that to the superintendent of schools.
Yeah,
and
I
he
think
could.
Dick Banks is doing some work on it.
Good.
It's moving slow.
Yeah.
So we'd like to get somebody before spring.
Good. Okay, thank you, gentlemen, again. If there's no further discussion on the presentation, we'll go ahead to the appointments. I'm appointing Gus Matucci to the Ordinance Review Committee, and that fulfills the committee. Could I have a motion to approve the appointment of Gus Matucci? Motion by Councilor Lettieri, seconded by Councilor Sanford. Any discussion? Not. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? It's unanimous. Public? Yes. Council?
Usually appointments are the new business, aren't they?
Yeah, but you, Councilor Calla had suggested a while back that we put them up in the beginning in case we had the people here. So that's why we moved it up.
Did I?
Yeah, we thought that,
To let them go home in a reasonable hour.
I guess. Would you like me to go back into the minutes and find
Take
that?
credit for it. It's a good
Okay.
Good one, yeah.
Accidentally, I just made that up to place the blame. Public comments.
This is coming.
Yeah, I'm gonna look at the data.
Seeing no public comment, we move on to correspondence.
I think I have a question. Okay. This is the.
Give me just 1 second here. We did receive a correspondence that I read last week, and Judy Coyman asked me to read it again, that they are having the fair for those who care for those in need, and it's going to be at the Cottage Park Yacht Club, 7 p.m. on March 28th. The entertainment starts at 8 p.m., and there will also be a 50/50 cash bar. 50/50 raffles and a cash bar. Yeah,
I'll split it with them.
If anybody that would like to make purchase tickets, the Winthrop Marketplace, Robert DeLeo Center, and the Winthrop Book Depot have tickets available. I received a correspondence today from Chief Flanagan expressing appreciation on behalf of the members of the Winthrop Fire Department. I would like to thank you for your donation to the Fire Department Building Fund in remember of our colleague and friend, Elizabeth Betty Vasquez. Gratefully, Chief Paul Flanagan. This afternoon, we received a report from the Planning Board, and I just want to read the cover letter, and I'll leave the report for those who wish to see it. It is on our email, and we can publish it on the website. With apologies Dear colleagues, with apologies for the late submission, I'm closing a brief memorandum from the Planning Board seeking public policy direction in regard to the funding of required public infrastructure to support the revitalization of the Center Business District. As the memorandum suggests, the board has commenced its first major design and site review plan for the proposed new construction of a 36,000 square foot mixed-use building to be constructed at the corner of Somerset and Cottage Park Road. Our initial meeting was quite successful, and the neighbors were constructively engaged and supportive. However, all the parties are convinced that design review cannot be successfully completed without a more clear understanding of the council's intent to invest in public infrastructure to support the new development in the Center Business District. I realize this memo is arriving too late for inclusion in tonight's agenda, but hope you might take a moment to consider the next steps. Please note that the design review is incomplete and we still have reservations about the initial design. However, we believe that these issues can be successfully negotiated. And if commitment for public infrastructure is apparent, Councilor Sanford, Councilor Mayle, and I attended that meeting, and it was very, very productive, very well accepted by the neighbors, the prospective project. I would like to ask Councilor Sanford, although we're not going to take action, Chairman Roach suggested that maybe the Economic Development and Planning Board could have a joint meeting.
Yeah.
So if you could set that up,
I can set that
I
up.
would appreciate that. There is no further correspondence. Committee reports. Councilor.
Rules and Ordinance Committee had a meeting last Tuesday evening. Meeting was called to order at 7:20. Present with myself, Councilor Barone, Councilor Del Vento, Council President Peter Gill, and Councilor Craig Mayle. There were, the issue that was on the agenda was houseboats and liveaboards. There were also 11 people who were either from the Atlantis condominiums or the Atlantis Marina present at the meeting. We read the planning board statement and findings, policy statement that they put forward, listened to objections of that statement. We also read a letter from a Deborah Dolan who had submitted a written objection to the planning board statements. Then we had a question and answer period for approximately an hour and a half. The meeting adjourned at 8:40.
Thank you, Councilor. And then you're going to continue on with a series of meetings?
We're having a series of meetings until we can draft a waterways rules regulation, because there are many different issues. We have to contact the Coast Guard to make sure we're doing the right thing, as well as maybe getting MEPC involved. So it's going to take probably until May to get this done. Time for the season, hopefully.
Just to comment on that meeting too, I felt that was a productive meeting. I felt it could have been less friendly than it was, and I thought that input from both directions.
Friendly for a minute.
It was well controlled by the chairman of the committee, but I also thought there was some good positive input there. It wasn't all negative.
Yes.
And I thank you for that. On the Finance Committee, Councilor Del Vento is away on vacation, so he has not met since our last meeting. However, he will be meeting to discuss a couple of things that we're going to bring up later on in the agenda, and also the digital equipment piece is still on there. Council, if I could, never mind. Moving on, Town Manager's report.
Good evening. I just want to update all the members on the recent power outage. As you know, power was lost in many areas of the town a little over an hour ago. It was caused by a 13,000 volt line that came down on Cross Street. National Grid responded, and I'm being told that all power has been restored.
Thank you.
Other than that, just a few other things. You received the February monthly financial report that I emailed, as well as put in the Dropbox. I added a tab on snow and ice costs. I just want to comment on that. So total spent to date is approximately $650,000. The original budget was $90,000, so that leaves a deficit of $560,000. Within that $560,000 is $495,000 that's been submitted to MEPA on an IDA report, the initial damage assessment reports. And so that's 4 different storms that make that $495,000 up. So if we got the maximum reimbursement we could possibly get, that would result in $371,000 coming back. However, that requires that all 4 storms be classified and declared as an emergency. So as of right now, only the first storm, the January 26th to February 1st, has been declared as an emergency. So we have some confidence that we'll receive approximately 75% of that $127,000 storm. So that's the snow and ice update. In addition, on April 7th,
Why don't we wait till he finishes the findings? Okay, go ahead.
At the April 7th Town Council meeting, Powers and Sullivan will be here to present the results of the fiscal year 14 audit and management letter. Just in summary, there were no new comments in the management letter. 7 prior year comments were resolved, 4 prior year comments were partially resolved, and there are 2 that are still, as of the date of the report, were still open. One of them was the disaster recovery plan that the Town Council voted to fund back in December, so that's resolving itself. So that's April 7th. Last night there was a school building committee meeting, and one of the topics that was discussed in detail was the request by the contractor, Gilbane, and the OPM folks, Skanska, that they're going to be requesting to close Main Street from Payson to Cross. South Main? From Payson to Cross. They want to be closing it from May 1st till the end of December. There will be a meeting on Thursday with our public safety team, Chief Delahante, Chief Flanagan, and Director Calla, with the folks from Gilbane and from Skanska to discuss the logistics of it. It's our understanding, we believe that it'll come to council for discussion and perhaps a public hearing.
Just a correction for the record, that's actually Main Street. South Main runs off to the left.
Yeah.
Main Street runs all the way to the golf course.
Okay.
Go ahead, sir.
And then
School update.
finally, there's a couple of motions tonight that really pertain to sort of residual snow costs relating to potholes and some work that needs to be done down at the cemetery.
Okay, question on the finances. Council Mail had a question.
So we wouldn't receive any of these monies back, and we would have to cover them anyway. Any money that came back for snow would go into next year's receipts, correct?
Any money we receive, it depends on when we receive it.
Likelihood, if we did not receive it by June 31st or June 30th, it would go into next year.
That's correct.
And we would still either have to take that off the recap or fund it ahead of time.
That's correct.
So our obligation to handle this is inside this budget year still.
That is correct, assuming that we don't want to put it all on the recap.
Assuming that we don't want to all put it on the recap.
Correct.
Okay, so are we going to get a recommendation from you in a period of time as to what you think is the best process, or are you looking for our thoughts on that?
No, we will. We're just sort of waiting for the dust to settle. I'd like to wait until the winter's over, which hopefully we're there, to get an actual total amount. And then, as we had proposed a month or so ago, to budget an amount on the recap consistent with prior years, and then fund the remaining balance through stabilization, was the recommendation. Just waiting for the winter to finish and the dust to settle. And it'd be good to, if we do get information on these remaining 3 storms, at least we might have some intel on whether or not we're going to get reimbursed for it. Because if we're going to get reimbursed for it, and it's $370,000 roughly, even if it's next year, it just provides a little bit of comfort that if we're taking, if it goes into next year, we end up benefiting from it in terms of free cash down the road. And if we keep with our policy of putting certain percentages into stabilization, it all sort of makes its way back, in theory.
Any further questions for council?
So we have an interesting scenario. We have a policy on what we'll put into free cash, but we really don't have a policy on what we'll take out of those funds. And, I personally like to pay for bills when I get them, so, if my thoughts were, being thought about at that particular point in time, would be my desire to put what we normally put on the recap and handle the rest inside our current year budget, either through, to reduce our free cash going for next year, or move it to stabilization, because I don't think we want to change our mode of operation for what I consider to potentially not be a long-term, I don't know that we're gonna get, 108 inches of snow every year. Historically, that doesn't happen. So we do have an average, and I think we should maintain that. So my feeling is, whatever you can, I would want to pay out of this year's, this year's operating cash, and whatever stabilization fund we have to cover it when we go into the end of the year.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when we set up the stabilization funds and the free cash, we said that there was always that money was there to be moved back out if it needed to be by a vote of the council. That's why it was there.
That's the purpose of the stabilization.
Council?
I guess, I can see the Vice President's point of wanting to pay, now, but this is one of the few items, I believe you had said, that can be kind of carried over to the next year. And if and I agree with the Vice President that it's unlikely we're going to have 108 inches of snow, so if we could defray it over maybe the next year, where our costs might be, a little bit less, and take the hit over 2 years instead of the one. I guess I'd rely on your fiscal judgment to let us know.
So we can see at that time.
Yeah.
That would be an option. You can lag it over multiple years on the recap, I believe. But like I said, I want to wait and see what we're looking at for costs, and then weigh those options, and then certainly present a recommendation to council.
Any further questions for CFO Gordon? Hearing none, you want to move on to the rest of your report?
Yes. I'm going to ask DPW Director Calla to just comment on the snow efforts and cleanup.
At this point, we all are aware that we've lifted the ban. It's pretty obvious as the snow melts, the damage that's out there that we now have to start addressing and fixing. We got guardrails, we got catch basins that have collapsed, manhole structures, plenty of potholes. I'm actually requesting a motion that should be before you tonight for $20,000 to start on the pothole repair, and an additional $30,000 for the restoration of the Belle Isle Cemetery. The Belle Isle Cemetery was our first snow storage area for storms 1 and 2. The pavement up on the roadway in the Belle Isle Cemetery, as well as the parking lots, took a fair amount of damage, by the front end loaders up there and the trucking that occurred up in that area. I'll also touch on the athletic fields. I know it's a topic that's on the forefront of everybody's minds. It's on ours as well. I'm actually a baseball coach, so I understand the urgency. I will say this. The last thing that we want to do right now is put heavy equipment on any of those fields. By doing that, we won't get on those fields this year. We have to let Mother Nature do its thing, melt it. We're experiencing problems up in the cemeteries. Obviously, we have to make interments. We're forced to go on the grass up there, and we're doing it with machines with turf tires and much smaller equipment, and we're still creating all kinds of damage for the turf. So hopefully you'll take my recommendation to stay off those fields until the snow melts. Otherwise, I don't believe we'll get on those fields this year. We'll be resurfacing everything. We do have a plan in place once the snow melts, which I actually brought Mr. O'Donnell along because I wanted him to get into it a little bit. It entails rollers, overseeding. Actually, Paul, if you want to just kind of give a quick briefing on what your intentions are.
It's kind of hard to tell how many acres, but we're figuring somewhere around 7 acres, which would be a good part of 5 acres of Ingleside Park and 2 acres of Veterans Field behind the old high school, the new high school. Preliminary cost for overseeding, rolling them, starter fertilizer, and loom would be somewhere around $5,500. You know, that's a guess, but I don't know how bad it is. It would take, just gonna have to take Mother Nature and let it dry out so that we can work on the fields. I guess sometime in the middle of April, but it could even be later. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's gonna go real fast. The weather's gonna get very cold this week. And it's hard to say until we see the grass completely.
I only brought this up because I'm receiving many emails about ways to melt the snow. And what I want to remind everybody that's been putting these emails out there, and the videos that are attached to them, these are undisturbed snowy areas. They're not snow farms where you have compacted dump truck loads of snow accumulated and concentrated in an area. So, unfortunately, we're at the mercy of Mother Nature. You can see when the ground was frozen, the tire tracks right now, as the snow is slowly melting away, the damage that happened just with the weight of the vehicle on icy conditions. You go on there now, I mean, you can walk on there. It's soft. Got to let it melt, dry out, and we'll remedy the areas that have been affected.
When you drive these heavy pieces of equipment, it's like a sponge. So what you're doing is just pushing the water out and pushing it up. And then it just turns to soup. As soon as you drive on it, it makes some tire marks. So it really is, it would be disastrous, I think, to do anything until it's ready.
And it's further damaging it by doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I was at one of the graves today, and it's just the soil where we had to go in and turn the trucks and get the material out and bring the backhoe in, turned into soup. It was just mud and soup, there was nothing left. And that's with plywood done. Sheets of plywood everywhere.
I also want to remind you that there are irrigation in both of these fields. So as you start depressing vehicles on the soft soils, you're going to be creating havoc on your irrigation system as well. So again, it seems like I've been doing this for a while now, but I got to ask for continued patience and trust us that by not going on it, it's not that we're shying away from any work. It's the fact that it's our recommendation and our experience that we're just going to create much more damage than what we already have. We can deal with what we got, we can fix it. But you start going on there and trying to truck snow out of there, one, where are we trucking it to, but you're going to create a whole bunch of damage in the process.
Thank you. Just a quick also on the expected trash and litter issues. I know you're going to get those as we move the snow.
I did, yeah, I wanted to speak on that. Again, as the snow melts, you can see the debris out there. Street sweeping starts
April?
Yeah, the last week in April. What we'll do prior to that, DPW will have ground crews on every plow route. We'll be walking the streets, picking up trash. I will love to get some community cooperation. I want to reach out to the beautification committee. If we can get some townwide cleanups, and anybody that wants to go out there, and picks up trash and puts it in a bag, call DPW, we'll come, we'll pick up those bags and we'll dispose of them. But it's going to take a community effort. I mean, the wind blows things around, and there is quite a bit out there. There was storms where trash got put out, never got picked up because of the storm, and as the snow banks melt, they're no longer in the bags. The bags have been ripped, and we have a bit of a mess out there. We have been cleaning it up. We've got all the space-saving objects more or less picked up. They're still being uncovered a little bit as the snow melts, but we're also well aware of the trash, and we will be out there on foot picking it up as well.
Thank you for the space savers. I've noticed that there's been many less. I'm saying that backwards, but
disappointing. You have a used furniture sale sometime in the
Steve, you might get some help with that by calling the sheriff's office. We called them last year, and they came down and they did that whole area around Veterans Road, and in
Right.
between the ditch there.
Yeah, we are in communication with them, and we will reach out to them.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's coming up next. Also, I'm glad you mentioned the community effort. I've had, in the last couple of days, several conversations with Alan Peabody, and he would like to come to our next council meeting. I've scheduled him. Alan is the chairman of the beautification committee. He'd like to come and give sort of an outline of his plan. We got kind of excited today and called the people who were involved in the Winthrop Cares cleanup, not this year, but this past year. And he's aiming to do a cooperative effort with them to do a cleanup. As we know, the beautification committee will hit a park, periodically they do the different parks. What they're looking for is a joint community effort. In the meantime, we would like to address the individual houses and specifically the businesses. If you could carry that message for us to the chamber, that we're kind of looking at it as a reverse broken window syndrome, where if there's one window broken, another window gets broken, and making it a reverse broken window syndrome, that if I clean in front of my house, then you're going to clean in front of your house, and it spreads. So we're encouraging people not to leave it all for the street sweeper at the end of April, but to get out there and get it started now. And I know that you guys are going to, be able to get into areas where nobody is parked. But the individual neighborhoods, if people would get out and do their own and please the businesses in the business areas. I know it's people that, it's time consuming and you have other things on your minds as business people. But if we look at it as a motivation to the business owner as well, the more attractive your storefront is, the more likely people are going to go into it. So I would ask the chamber to make a statement to their people, and the beautification committee will be in, it's actually 3 weeks from tonight, our next meeting, with a little presentation on how they plan to proceed. So I like your idea of the community effort. I like your idea of everybody taking responsibility in front of their own house.
Council? You may want to consider the council making a proclamation for Winthrop Beautification Day and have a tie-in with the chamber. We used to do it years ago, and businesses got involved and neighborhoods got involved. Maybe something Alan Peabody wants to head in conjunction maybe with the chamber and letting people know about it. Take a day. Everybody's kind of stir crazy being in all winter.
Good
So
idea.
it might be an opportunity in the springtime for everybody to get out, clean in front of their houses, clean in front of their business, make it a town-wide effort.
Good.
And yeah, I think it's something to consider.
I also spoke to John Macero briefly today about doing something with the schools, that the kids would come out and clean in front of the school, and that again sets the pace for, I and my class went out and we cleaned, and it's an awareness thing. The next time I have a candy wrapper, I'm not going to throw it on the ground. So I think if we take this, as an opportunity, make lemonade out of lemons, and kind of like the blizzard of '78 when everybody got together and did things, I think if we could turn this around to a positive event, it could be tremendous. And thank you for the proclamation idea, Council.
And you know what else too? Not just the trash, and that's really important, but as the spring rolls around and the grass starts to grow, and the grass grows out of everywhere, it grows out of the sidewalks, the gutters, out of the trees, around the trees and so forth. It would be nice if everybody just took care of the area in front of their house.
Yes.
And Vice President Mail and I, have been trying to get that, out there to beautify your area and, to be proud of it, because you're paying taxes for it. You want, Winthrop to look nice, and this is just another way of helping everyone out.
And
So
I would
think,
ask the council to keep on top of that in the next
Yeah.
several meetings as we approach the summer and as we go through the summer.
Correct.
It's a good point, because you go by one house and the weeds are sticking up this high and I think it's that whole thing that it spreads too. If I do my weeds, you're gonna do your weeds. Any other comments before we move on? Chief?
I just said, Council President, the initial, as I talked to Tim with the initial damage assessment, these are all pertaining to snow removal, overtime cost, snow removal, protective measures, fire and police. But as Steve uncovers the damage at the cemetery, I think this fence at Donovan's Beach, the fields, this was just the initial assessment. The first blizzard was historic snowfall in a 24-hour period. That $127,000 has already been approved. The state has put it in as a group of 4 storms, and those couple of inches, as annoying as they were the other day, put us into another historic period. But all of the costs now, once the declaration is made for the Suffolk County, is the $30,000 that you need for the cemetery lot, what we're gonna need to put the fields back in, signposts, fences, that's all when FEMA comes and sits with us. Those are all continued allowable costs. So we're not locked in at 75% of this 495. That's great. We were taught that we expected, as things got uncovered, that our damage claim would go up in this assessment.
Thank you, Chief. If I could call on Chief Delahanty, I know that the parking ban has been lifted, but there are still very strong guidelines about what we can and cannot do.
Absolutely, and those guidelines can be found on the town website as well on the Facebook page of the town, the police department. The transcript hopefully will be publishing that as well. But the guidelines are fairly simple. Don't obstruct the street, make sure other cars can pass you, and don't park too close to the intersections, as the fire trucks might need more room than that 20-foot from the intersecting way state law. Please take those into consideration when you're parking. It doesn't mean, the memo does not mean 12 inches from the snowbank or the ice line. It means 12 inches from the curb. And you really should have a clear area on the curb. And even in some streets that have a clear area on the curb, the other side's still 2 to 3 feet out from the curb. So you have to take in that shortage of space on the other side as well to make sure cars can pass, for you not to be obstructing the street. Everyone's been very cooperative with us. The people who have been easing back into parking on the street have done it responsibly, and we appreciate their cooperation and their continued cooperation.
Thank you, Chief.
Can I ask a question?
Go ahead.
Terry, just, I was wondering how many people got ticketed for not shoveling? Because I go by, this is a month after the storm, and I still see
That's
people that are not shoveling.
inspectional services.
Yeah, do you have any idea?
You know, I owe a number to Councilor Varone. I apologize for not, there's no report on that because there's no citations that were issued in January or February for one-way violations, including those streets that you questioned. So I apologize for not getting back to you sooner. I can drill down with Al Legee tomorrow and inspectional services and get you a number. However, you know, some of the streets, we did feel it wasn't fair to enforce the sidewalks because we had to force so much snow upon them. I know that was the initial view in the first week after the storm. But I certainly feel their pain because I shoveled mine, including the corner, including down Highland Ave, and it wasn't an easy task. So we tried to get those people that were in need of help, the help they need, and those, it might be now a time to resurface and recircle on that issue.
Just pointing out,
No, go ahead.
and your street's probably the worst.
But mine is shoveled.
Yours is shoveled, absolutely. And people did put that effort in and shoveled all the way around the corners. And people don't try to walk your dog now or take a walk because the weather is a little bit warmer, and all of a sudden they come to a brick wall, and they have to go out in the street, which is dangerous. So, I mean.
Jason, the health inspector, was out today writing tickets.
Yeah.
Just a comment
And
on.
I'll talk to the DCI too, but I know Shore Drive is still not clear. It's only cleared about halfway down because I walk my dog down there and you have to cross the street. So I'll see what we can get with DCR up there to clear the rest of their sidewalk as well.
Councilman.
One area, and I don't even know if it's under our control, that is particularly difficult 365 days a year, is when you're coming from Cliff down Grover's to Shore Drive, and you go to take that left-hand turn. It does seem as though that there should be a setback on that corner, winter, spring, summer, and fall, because you cannot go and successfully make that left-hand turn because cars are parked on the right-hand side coming up the beach, and it seems as though there should be no parking from that first driveway to the corner. And I don't know if that's our territory or
That is.
if it's yours, then it should go to TSAC and.
Well, I don't think it needs TSAC. The state law says 20 feet from an intersecting lane. I think it's a signage issue. I've had the cars tagged up there numerous times. I make that left-hand turn often. And my former secretary, Patricia Wall, brought it to my attention last spring. So I will get with the DPW director and get a sign up there to rectify that problem.
That's the European 20 feet, which is to the first driveway, I think. So it's just a new ruler that's out you can try.
That'll be about 20 feet.
That's what I thought.
And Chief, while you're on your feet, the one-ways temporaries, we have been extending them 7 days at a time. Do we need to extend any of them anymore?
No, I talked to the DPW director, the fire chief, early this afternoon, and the acting town manager as well, and we feel that those can be left at that time.
Good, okay. So there are no more one-ways, no more temporary one-ways, so we don't have to take another vote.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Just one other thing, the job isn't over, but you guys, DPW, police, fire, have really done over and above the call of duty over the last several weeks, and I don't want it to go unrecognized, and I don't want you to think that now you can start working 40 hours a week. You're still on 70 or 80 hours a week until everything's done. But appreciate it, and I have to say that people say to me, have you gotten a lot of complaint calls? And I have to say that the majority of the calls that I've gotten have not been complaints. They've been positive statements that we know what these people are working with. We drove through Revere, Everett, Malden, and Winthrop is a lot better off than many of the other communities. So I commend you guys and your teams for what you've done.
And I think it's, I think it's feelings are mutual that we have a great team with police, fire, and DPW, and of course the inspectional service has been a great help throughout the storm. And it would be remiss to say that our employees are probably glad the storm is over, so they'll hear us asking for more and more stuff every day. But our staff has also been wonderful during this time period. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilman.
I was just curious if you were going to be reviewing the work of the acting town manager over this last period of time, and if we could get a report in case it comes up again.
Well, it would have to be a dual report, because over the weekend I had something that I wanted to talk to the town manager about that had to do with the police chief. But the police chief was acting town manager, so I only had to send one note. Thank you, Terry.
I think they're both.
That violated.
What'd he say?
He thinks they're both great. That would be outside public comment, though. So
He would.
no reason to report it.
Oh, you're violating the open meeting law.
Maybe next time Mr. McKenna will consider a three-way break and give you a chance to shine, Paul. If there is no further town manager, Paul.
I'd just like to make a comment. I'd like to thank all the guys from the DPW, and especially the guys from the cemetery. We didn't cancel one interment for this whole season, which I think was quite an amazing feat. A lot of cemeteries closed for days, if not weeks. So thanks for everybody. DPW kept the roads open for us, and the guys in the cemetery kept going, and nothing better than a way to stop it. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Moving on to the school department update. Councilor Lettieri, could you give us a little update on your meeting last night?
School Building Assistance Committee met last night. Basically, everything's going well, everything's on budget, and still on time, even with the snow. As we said before, what they're trying to do is they're trying to do the slabs for the floors at the same time that they're putting the steel up, so that will put them back on track. Basically, they said that there's about 31 pieces of steel that, like the jigsaw puzzle or the erector set going up, and they're about 1,700 pieces in. They feel pretty confident that by the last week in April, they should be topping off the steel. And there will be some sort of ceremony, I'm sure, for the topping off of the steel. So that's all pretty much good news. They do feel that at the beginning of the month, they'll start pouring the concrete for the slabs, and there might be a 7 or 8 day period where there's some extended time. That, not loud work, but that they said that they might be working 11 or midnight. They might have some additional lighting, and I'm sure that they should talk to the neighbors about that, but it wouldn't be loud work, but there would be extended work for pouring the slabs.
Council?
Yes?
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Just make sure that they have to apply for a 7 to 7 permit after working after 7 to the council. So they need to get that on their agenda. It used to be the police chief could issue that, it's the council now that issues that weekend and holiday and after hours permit.
Okay. And also the major point, as Tim had brought up, was the closure of the street, which wasn't a surprise, but again, when it comes, it seems like a surprise. I mean, it was discussed earlier on. We're not exactly sure, I'm not exactly sure if the chief has the power to do the closure for that length of time. So what we thought would be a good idea, because they want to start this May 1st. And we thought it would be a good idea to bring it to the council. It was not, we did not have time to put it on the agenda, but to try to get this into committee so we could start discussing it. I think it's important that we had a public hearing on it, regardless of who's in charge of this, that, you know, you have the neighbors and try to understand their concerns and try to work with them, which I'm sure everybody will. But not sure what committee you'd like to put it to, whether public safety would be my suggestion.
Yeah, public safety. Yeah, get the,
So I'd like to make a motion on the new business to see if we could suspend the council rules, bring this up and put that to public safety.
Okay, yep, if you bring that up in the new business, that'd be great. And if you schedule the other issue for
Yes.
for the agenda too. Also under school updates, the high school mock trial team had an impressive victory over Cambridge, Ringe and Latin. Again, it's an extracurricular activity, different from, separate from athletics, as is the Drama Society, who has received multiple awards, and they were advanced to the semifinals in Marblehead on last Sunday. They did not move forward, however, they have received multiple awards as a Drama Society. Winthrop High School girls basketball went all the way to the, I believe, to the state finals.
State semifinals.
State semifinals, and then were defeated at their last game by not by St. Mary's, Archbishop Williams, right, okay, thank you. And the Arthur T. Cummings Anti-Bullying Club is addressing bullying, and they are hosting a school pride night on May 28th. And the seniors are having their all-night celebration that they have on May 29th, and the CASA is working with the senior class advisors to make sure that that's a safe evening for the school. That's the update on the schools. Under old business, the parking ban that was on the agenda, we've addressed, and it's no longer in effect. The one-way temporaries are no longer in effect. And if I could ask Council Barone to comment on an update on the Herman Street SDOD.
Thank you, Council President. On Thursday, March 12th at 7 p.m. here in the Harvey Room, there was a community meeting concerning the potential SDOD at 60 Herman Street. The developers put on a little presentation, Ocean Development, I believe they are. Their attorney, Richard Lynn, spoke for quite some time. Residents' concerns were addressed just as best they could, and there was food and refreshments, and there was an opportunity for each side to go back and forth and ask questions. I believe that they're looking for either a 4-unit development or a 5-unit development. That seems to be their sweet spot. They do have, under SDOD, they have the capability of going up to 8 units in the building, which would be single units, single bedroom units. The discussion centered around parking. So their sweet spot would be a 4 or 5 unit development. They had suggested that if it went by right to a 2-unit, 2-family style house, that would not be economically feasible for them.
Thank you. And I do need to comment that again, was a well-run meeting that was not as negative as it could have been, and I commend you for having that neighborhood meeting. Too bad there was so much food left over. They should have warned us that they were going to have all that food and saved us cooking at home. Also on that item is still on the table for rules. If it could come back to rules with a recommendation for next.
There's no follow-up meeting or anything like that?
There's no follow-up scheduled at this time.
So we put it on our agenda.
Rules had it, rules tabled it, and so if we could bring it back with a recommendation at the April 7th meeting, that'd be great. Councilor Barone, also on the 17 Walden.
Go ahead. You want to mention that? 17 Walden Street, the SDOD, which is the former Muffintown building on the corner of Walden and Lincoln, that area in there. The planning board will be meeting and discussing that on April 13th.
And that will be a public meeting.
Public meeting here in the Harvey Room at 7 p.m.
April 13th, it's a Monday, same night as school committee. Okay, and the council employees annual review, could you give us an update, Councilor Lettieri?
Yes, we have, I think, five of the council reviews in so far. I had talked to the town manager before he went away, and he is fine with us putting off this until the first week in April, first meeting in April. So we've extended the period for the councils to have time to bring in their evaluations, and we will schedule a meeting to go over those and compilate those evaluations, which has not been scheduled yet, but will probably be scheduled next Monday.
I know that you
Potentially.
had asked the councils to have this stuff in by the.
Yes, but we had
25th,
sent
by
out
the
an
20th.
email extending it because the town manager wasn't going to be around, and he was perfectly fine with extending it, so.
Right, but I think you had asked us to have our evaluations to you by the 20th.
Yes.
Okay, and tentatively, if you could set up a meeting for the Wednesday, the 25th.
Which is fine.
Because then I could be there.
Yep, that's fine.
And also on that,
Wednesday and Thursday.
yeah, he's gonna do Wednesday. And also at that meeting, if we could just discuss an item that we talked about before, Jim,
The committee.
the committees, how they work together and just to re-update on that. Okay, great. Yes, Council. I'm sorry.
I'm going to book that Rules and Ordinance Committee meeting for the 60 Herman Street STOD for 7 PM on the 31st, It's Tuesday evening.
Okay. You like to take the off Tuesdays, that's good.
That's right. That's
So the rules will be the 31st?
Yes, 7 PM. And just a moment.
You doing hospital number 2 then, too?
Yes, we'll be hospital number 2
Okay.
and 60 Herman
60
Street.
Herman Street, yeah.
Okay. That covers, okay. Under new business, we had old business. We had one other thing on old business that's not on the agenda, and it was the document management motion that we had at the last meeting, and that is still in finance. Okay? Okay, great. New business. We have a motion that the town council authorize the transfer of $30,000 from the sale of lots and graves fund to fund road repair at the Belle Isle Cemetery, or take any action relative thereto. Could I have a motion? Motion by Councilor Sanford, seconded by? Seconded by Councilor Boyajul. We're going to refer that to finance?
Right, referring it to
So that'll be a motion to refer to finance, Council? Okay. Let's ask finance to have that, I should say, advertise a public hearing for that on the 7th. So you don't have to advertise it tomorrow, you don't have to advertise it this week, you can do it next week. Okay. So a public hearing on the 7th for that, referred to finance to come out before that. Okay, and then there's a motion that the town council authorize the transfer of $20,000 from town council reserve 0111052-576100 to DPW Materials and Supplies, account 0142052-542006, to fund the extraordinary pothole repairs or take any action relative thereto, and we will also refer that to finance. If I could have a motion. Motion by Councilor Lettieri, seconded by? Second. Councilor Sanford?
Yes, question. Now that it's on this guy, is that an emergency type situation that we need this money for the potholes?
It'll be okay, I think.
It is. I mean, there's currently under $1,500 in that supply line for highway. I can keep moving on it because there's a majority, not a majority, there's a fair amount of potholes that are associated from previous water and sewer digs that I can keep going with a little bit of the out of the enterprise supply lines, to address those. But once you start getting into potholes that aren't around sewer and water digs, those are going to have to be, unaddressed until it's that money is moved.
Since they're under 20,000, I'd like to make an amendment to make it an emergency motion, because I think the most important thing we need to do right now is fix those potholes before we get 30 lawsuits for broken tires and,
If there is no objection, can we have a motion to waive Rule 2B?
So
Motion
moved.
by Councilor Varone, seconded by Councilor Boyajin to waive Rule 2B. Any discussion on the motion? If not, all those in favor say, sorry.
No, it is the following motion, I'd like to ask a question.
If there's no discussion on the motion, to waive Rule 2B. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Rule 2B is waived, so now we're taking the motion that the town council will authorize the transfer of $20,000 from town council reserve 011052-576100 to DPW materials and supplies account 01422052 542006 to fund extraordinary pothole repairs. Motion by Councilor Boncory, seconded by Councilor Boyajin. Any discussion on the motion? Councilor Brown.
Discussion on the motion. Is $20,000 in your estimation going to take us through the season, or you possibly might have to come back to us for even more money?
As the weather continues to be the way it is, as you can see, every time it rains, potholes open up. It's going to give us, right now, I think it's a pretty good number. Do things deteriorate more that I need more money? It's a very difficult question for me to answer. This early in the spring. So I don't have a good answer for you.
So just, if I could
It'll
make
get
a
you
suggestion
started.
on that next week we have the spring forum, and if we could take a very brief special meeting, maybe we could take a separate motion with a higher number on it to then be referred out for a public hearing, because we can't go over 25,000 without a public hearing. So this emergency would allow the 20 to get them going. And then
That's fine.
If the council doesn't have any objection, I'll schedule a special meeting for 8 o'clock on the 24th after the public, and then we can cancel if we don't. Does that meet okay?
That's
Okay.
fine.
And then also on this motion, before we pass it, we'll need a motion, I believe, to waive the referral to the finance committee, correct?
But we never
No, to waive, don't we have a rule that we have to refer to the finance committee before we make an appropriation?
Not if we waive
Just in case, could I have a motion to waive the referral to the finance committee by Council Boncory, seconded by Council Seer? All those in favor of waiving the referral to the finance committee, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. To the main motion. I won't read it again. Any further discussion on the main motion of the appropriation of $20,000? Not all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. Council.
Paul was here making an announcement about the 5,500 for overseeding and stuff. Now, he had left, but I think it's important that we do something about that also. Now, I know we don't have a motion in front of us. However, that was more for the reseeding for the grass, right? It doesn't really address the fields themselves, infield, type of work that might be needed for that because of the snow. Do you anticipate? Do you have any ballpark, so to speak?
Yeah, well, we did our best to keep the storage off of the actual infields. I mean, we're close in areas. We did our best not to drive over the infields. Again, we're not going to know the true extent of those fields until these piles melt. But
Paul had mentioned that he probably wouldn't be starting this till early April at best, but we're not meeting again.
I think you misinterpreted. I think you're probably looking, by the time these fields dry out to a point that we can get on them.
End of April?
End of April, easy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, so if maybe we need an item for that on the agenda for the April 7th.
It's definitely something we want to start talking about, absolutely.
Tim, could you put that on for Jim? Thank you.
And I also think that the schools should be making a contribution to that as well. It's, right now they contribute on an annual basis $20,000 for fields maintenance. This again is extraordinary. It shouldn't strictly be on the town side. It should be a matched. I believe it should be a matched investment.
Tim, if you want to make that note to Jim too, that Councilor Tim.
And just a follow-up, we talked about the baseball fields, Miller Field. Any idea on Miller Field and would that melt quicker because there wasn't a lot of, I mean, do you anticipate that being, have you talked to the schools, I guess, about spring sports and how it's going to affect and the possibility of lacrosse? I know they're looking for outside fields, but is that
Yeah, we have had the discussion, most of my discussions have been through Sean Driscoll. John Macero's been, tied up on some personal stuff. But we will have, I do anticipate Millerfield melting much quicker than both Ingleside and Veterans Field. In fact, if you look at Coughlin Park right now, any of these undisturbed areas, they're going down quickly. I still wouldn't recommend going out there with snow blowers or anything to that nature. Let it get down and then, let it dry out. I don't think you'll be on Millerfield.
Much before May.
Much before May. Yeah.
Thanks.
Any further questions from the council regarding that? Okay, still under new business, we had a motion from Councilor Mayle that he was making a motion that for the 2015 voting season, each waterway license purchased shall be provided 4 ferry tickets to be used in this calendar year for no charge. A couple of comments on this before we refer to finance. I'll need a motion to waive Rule 2B, because this wasn't in by 1 o'clock, and I know.
What time is it in?
1:40, 1:50,
Oh,
1:47.
well, then
I'll make
let's
a
hold it
motion.
off to the next time. Since it wasn't in on time, we don't want to break that rule.
I'll make a motion.
So somebody can make a motion. if they
I'll make a
wanna waive
motion,
the
we rule. waive the rule.
2B.
2B.
I'll second that motion.
Motion made and seconded that we waive Rule 2B. Any discussion on waiving Rule 2B? I'll just make the comment that I would like to waive from, I've said this 5 times before, that we make the waiving of Rule 2B for something that is of a semi-emergency nature. All those in favor?
Let me just
go ahead.
comment, I didn't ask for it to be waived.
No, I know you didn't. I just encourage everybody. Denise had the thing, the agenda all done, ready to distribute, as we do every week. We did adjust the agenda, and I would just like to make the point that we'd like to have everything in by 1, as Rule 2B says.
Can I make a comment?
Yep.
My feeling is if it didn't come in at that period of time, we're gonna have the rule, you just don't put it on the agenda, and then we wouldn't be in this position. If you wanna let it wait, that's fine with me.
As a
It wasn't there.
courtesy, I put it on the agenda and asked if anybody wanted to waive Rule 2B. Yes, you're right, it could have been refused to go on the agenda. As a courtesy,
I can
put it
withdraw
on
the motion
agenda.
if it's, I'm happy to. If you want to just go.
Council Boyajin, if you want to withdraw your...
How about I withdraw the motion and we deal with it?
Who did the second?
I will withdraw my second.
Okay, so it's postponed to the next meeting. Moving on, public comment. Seeing none. Just a comment to, under public relations, to recognize John and Trudy Macero for receiving the Mass Cultural Council Creative Youth Award. It's a pretty significant award, and they did a nice presentation at WCAT last week. The reason it was at WCAT is it was held in the State House, but Mr. and Mrs. Macero were tied up on personal business and could not be there. So that's why it was held in Winthrop, and the speaker was there, and there were several people there to acknowledge them. On things that are upcoming, the Spring Forum is next Tuesday. That's at the DeLeo Center. And I would ask that we also schedule a special council meeting at 8 o'clock. On March 28th, I already mentioned those who can. For those who can't, on April 7th, as Tim mentioned, the Powers and Sullivan will be here as to make the annual audit report, of the external audit report. We had the Wellness Awareness Week presentation earlier by Mrs. Hurley. And I believe that is all, unless anybody has anything under public relations.
I do.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just trying to find it now, where my, sorry. I've got to put this on display here, but this is, my wife is part of the Double B's program, and they're on Thursday, just to make sure I get it correct, Thursday, March 26th is Spread the Word to End the Word, and they're selling these T-shirts here that their students helped make to raise funds for that, as well as their annual trip to Birchmont Camp. And I'll certainly take anyone, but you can just contact Pauline Boyajian at the middle high school, or excuse me, the high school, and she'll make deliveries even to the town councilors here at the, drop them off in your box if you'd like one. And again, that's Thursday, March 26th.
Are they having something at the school?
They are, yes.
Okay.
It's an assembly at the school. The time, I will, my wife will probably text me any second with that, but
Okay.
but I'll let you know on that, more
But
specific.
if not, if you could put out a little email on what time it is.
Definitely will.
All right, and if I could just revert back to the spring forum, I forgot to mention that according to the town charter, the purpose of the annual spring forum is to provide an opportunity for the public to bring their concerns and comments regarding the budgeting process and other spending matters to our attention. The spring forum, we changed the format a little bit last year, and it seemed to work out very well, and we're going to do the same format this year. So it's anything to do with budgeting and spending matters, projecting for FY16. We would love to have you there. The quote that came up last year is that the budgeting process is really very simple. It's just not easy. Just like at home. Simple, but not easy. Okay, so the 26th is to spread the word, the 31st is the rules, special meeting next week, and then beautification committee will be here at the next meeting on the 7th with a little plan of attack. Yeah, Counselor.
Hope you're available. I'd like to do that public safety meeting on March 30th, it's a Monday night at 7.
I do, yeah, exactly.
Public safety on that.
On the discussion of closing Main Street.
Okay, and I think we were going to ask Gilbane to also send representatives there also.
Yes,
and,
could you take care of that?
Yes.
For that? And then we'll also invite anyone from the school committee if they
Where
want.
do you want to have the meeting?
Here.
You think there might be more people from the neighborhood and stuff? I'm not sure.
Do you think?
This works out pretty well.
Okay, I'm just thinking the senior center's conducive for a lot of the neighbors if they want to, if it's possible. It's totally up to you. Yeah, that's fine. Here is good.
What was the date? Sorry, is that the next meet, April 7th? Is that
April 7th is here,
All right, we'll
but
shoot
she's
for the
talking about the
senior
30th for the public safety.
We'll check it out.
We'll
Yeah,
check it out, see if it's available.
Just give the location on the town calendar.
Okay, so it'll either be here or in the
And you'll
senior
let-
center.
okay.
Any further under public relations or upcoming events? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Yeah,
Second.
Oh, yeah, hold on. Tim.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I just want to clarify, is there an effort to schedule a public hearing as it relates to the,
Closure?
yeah, the road closure, sorry.
The which?
The
road
closing the
closure.
road. I know we talked about it, but is that something that you want us?
Why don't we do a public hearing on you're doing on the 31st?
30th.
30th, so let's do a public hearing on that on the 7th as well?
On the 7th of April?
Yeah.
Okay.
Tim, would you give Denise the terminology, so she can put it on the paper for public hearing? Maybe give her the terminology tomorrow, the verbiage as to how that should be written.
Would that be after financing?
Find out.
The finance will have a special hearing, and then we'll have that special hearing the same night, and then the same night, Powers and Sullivan will be here,
All on the 7th?
all on the 17th.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, if there is no further comment, any further discussion, if not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. By Councilor Sanford, seconded by Councilor Boyashian. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.